Musictechworks. Musictechworks.
What's up, good people? CEDDMACK here. Just back with another video. You know, I've been peeping out a lot of videos, you know, because I'm interested in it. Not that because I'm on YouTube or whatever, it's just my interest. I love watching music production videos and, you know, hearing other people's opinion. That's cool, you know. So, but let me start this off by talking about ducking, right? So ducking is when I talk, the track automatically goes down. Okay, there's nothing wrong with the signal, but I might have had it, you know, just a little loud and it ducks a little bit too hard. So let's just go from there. So what I want to talk about today is when YouTubers talk about the MPC versus the computer. Okay. All right, so I'm just gonna go over my main points, and I wrote these out just to make sure I get my message across. So let's start this video off, and I really want to talk about YouTubers online comparing the MPC to computers. Oh, you should just get a computer and a laptop instead of an MPC. Okay, that's your opinion, so let me go ahead and voice mine since all of us have one, right? All right, so my first point is it is not the same as making beats on a computer versus the MPC, so stop saying that. All right, so my first point is comparing specs to a computer is a non-factor because the MPC is not a common device used by the average person who uses a computer. This YouTuber made two irrelevant points, which I'm still trying to figure out why he even said that. I know why, because he was digging. All right, so his points were you can't watch YouTube tutorials or have a Zoom meeting on an MPC. All right, I'm gonna let that marinate for you all. Number two, if you have not been using the MPC for the majority of your music production journey, how much does your opinion matter? If you've been clicking and dragging on the MPC 90% of the time, do you really think you're actually gonna enjoy and be better at making beats when trying an MPC for the first time? It's almost impossible to not favor your preferred method of making beats. Okay? All right, number three. So let's talk about this from, you know, all right, I'm not gonna get an MPC. Let me just start off with a computer. Okay, that's cool. That's normal. You know, these days especially, a decent computer with, you know, nice specs on it's gonna cost you about $1,000 to $1,500 if you really wanna go all out, and even more. I paid $4,500 for my MacBook Pro, okay? So, and then for my iMac Pro, I paid right around about the same price, okay? And they both are about $3,000 3 to 4 years old. Okay. All right. So a decent computer is going to cost $1,000 to $1,500 when optimized for music production. You will need plenty of storage space, okay, internally and externally. Even when storing content on an external drive, the internal drive still needs to be free enough to smoothly run the OS. All right. So also you need at least 32 gigabytes of RAM. I suggest 1 terabyte for the internal hard drive, and also 64 gigs of RAM. You can go even higher. I got a buddy of mine, he has 128 gigs of RAM in his. I'm like, okay, wow, that's straight. So he has the right computer, and he also has a internal hard drive that's 256 gigs. So right now we're in the process of upgrading that hard drive. So because it's hard to install applications in the OS, it gets a little bit choked up, not too much choked up, because even though it's 256 gigs, we got it freed a little bit, but that drive needs to be at least 50% free. All right, to avoid issues. It could vary per computer and per program. All right, so point number 4, you will also need software unless you're going to use a free DAW available or a free one that comes with a Mac, like GarageBand, so the price can vary. Having the full version of FL Studio is worth it in the long run. So, but start off where you can and upgrade when possible. All right. Other applications, they can be from free, up to over $500, or a subscription-based model for up to $30 plus a month with no option for a perpetual license. Now, I know with Studio One, after you pay for a while, you can own the perpetual license. I'll have to double check that information, but I believe that's what it is now. I bought my Studio One Pro 7, so I'm not too familiar with the subscription model. So if you're gonna go to computer right, I suggest FL Studio. Don't get the cracked version, because you're gonna tear your computer up, especially if it's a PC. All right, so again, I suggest FL Studio, Reaper, which was $69 the last time I checked, Studio One or Reason, and buy it outright. Also, Logic Pro. Logic Pro 10 is very nice. You pay $199 one time, and you're good to go. Free updates and everything. FL Studio has free updates for life, and Logic Pro 10 also has free updates for life. Okay, so right around now, 200. I'm gonna say on the middle. Let's say we at 1400 already. Not to mention you need an interface, because you should not use the built-in interface on the computer, especially if it's a PC. Mac sound cards are built-in sound cards are a little bit better, but you can get a gaming PC, but they just tend to be loud and run hot. So let me get to point number 5. So let's get to point number 5. The MPC is a dedicated music creation device with specialized tools and features natively built in, unlike a computer. So this goes for vintage MPCs, and especially for the new generation of MPCs using MPC 3.0, which is 3.6 and waiting on that 7. Okay, so it's not a computer to watch. It's not a device to watch YouTube videos on. Okay, I still think that comment was ignorant or trying to be funny or whatever. But if you want to watch YouTube on your phone, or get you a computer and watch YouTube on it. All right. So point number 6, or a thought, is I do not expect a computer-based music creator to understand the physical and nostalgic connection of using the MPC. So there's still something different about controlling the MPC with your hands and hearing the sound that comes out of it. So it's like passing your essence, your very soul to the unit when hitting those pads. So this is not the same as using a MIDI controller to tap in beats, to your DAW. And it's just something special about it when using an MPC. I don't expect mouse clickers and drag and drop producers to understand. It's like, it's like the machine becomes an extension of you. So nothing against those who drag and drop every now and then. I drag and drop as well. click, do all that kind of stuff. Even on the MPC, I may go to the grid mode and do some editing. But it's just something, just a feeling, especially when I first started using the MPC, which was a while ago. The first one that I owned was the 2000 XL. The first one that I used was the MPC 2000. Okay, it was at another studio over there in Huntsville. And I was like, okay, yeah, this is cool right here. All right. And back then, mostly everything was hardware. Nobody was really making beats on computers like that, So, point number 7, unless you know what you're doing, and almost, it doesn't matter. Sometimes you can know what you're doing anyway. So, it doesn't matter, or it could matter, but most of the time, drums are not going to hit the same coming out of software from your computer. It will be close to the new generation of MPCs, but not so close compared to the vintage MPCs. And that is, and that's mostly said for, for some genres of music. So my side points are, does it matter? And it's also a matter of opinion. Just about any sound can be tweaked, but out of the box, MPCs generally sound better for some genres of music, as does drums from a DAW or a VST. So I love how Kung drum sounds in Reason. Even the stock sounds sound great. But for me, MPC just sounds better. If you're new to hardware production and never worked in a real studio environment, with cables all over the place, and all you listen to is hip hop from 2010 and up, you may not get it, So I'm not gonna hold that against you. If you never really just experienced it, like in the studio live, coming off some big wall speakers, and just the way it sounds is just amazing. So if you haven't heard that, I suggest you, just book some time at a studio and say, hey, bring your MPC in here and play it. And then compare that to what's coming out of your DAW, all right? Point number 8. With the sound of the drums and how they sound coming out of the MPC, is that sound needed today? I'm talking about the vintage gear. Is that sound needed today? No. But better sounding music, which is subjective but proven, stands the test of time. I hear records today I feel won't be around in a couple of years. And you all know what records I'm talking about, okay? Ricky Dink production, Ricky Dink sound, no matter what they made it on. And then my 9th point, MPC software is basically now a DAW where everything can be done in the box. So it is only getting better with future updates. Is it perfect? No. Will it get the job done? Yes. Also, it's easy to export or record your tracks out of the MPC through the analog outs or through USB-C. So it depends on the genre of music that I'm producing. So for some real hip hop, some real rap music, classic hip hop or R&B, I'm tracking out, okay? It depends on the genre of music I'm producing. Some real rap music, classic hip hop, R&B, I'm tracking that out. You know what I'm saying? I'm running that through analog. I'm tracking it through my interface, probably going through my mixer, all kind of nice little gear and everything to kind of give it that little extra little shine to it. But for like some Taylor Swift, K-pop, or most sync tracks, I'm exporting that bad boy. I'm exporting or tracking through the USB-C. Sync library admins or the supervisors, they ask for changes with deadlines. So it's easy to make the change and export, all right? So to track out analog or digitally is your choice, and most consumers won't know the difference or care, all right? So let me make myself clear on that. They're not gonna listen to that and say, oh, this was exported digitally. They just want it to sound good, okay? It just has to sound good for people to buy your records, to play them over and over and over again. They have to sound good, all right? But your tracks might hit different going the analog route and attract more artists because of the difference in sound compared to every other beat maker. And, maybe worth time. Depends on the track, the style of music. Still, I'm not tracking out a beat the analog way for a K-pop record. And also the audience doesn't care. Just make it sound good, okay? So as for me and a producer and growing up in the era that I did and going back and listening to those older records and how they stand the test of time, it's just the way they just sound sonically, I prefer to track out most of the time. But like I say, for a little quick pop track, you know, they're using Logic and Ableton Live. They're not touching hardware. You know, they might master it through some analog hardware. They may even run it back out and run it back in, but a lot of those records, you know, I mentioned Taylor Swift, but man, a pop record don't have to hit like the drums coming through beating. You know, they don't do that. You know, the drums are probably an afterthought. I think they even mix I know when I mix pop records, I start with the instruments, and then I'll do my drums last because the drums are not as important, but they do have to sound good. I like the new Ed Sheridan, his music, and I did listen to the Taylor Swift album, which sounds really, really good. But yeah, we are exporting those tracks or tracking directly with USB-C. Okay, so number 10. So someone who's been making beats for less than 10 years who tells a new beat maker they're better off getting a PC and FL Studio is out of bounds, in my opinion. It takes a lot to learn this game, you know. Sometimes you get lucky, you might be making the beats, and you might get a placement real quick. But, you know, I'd rather listen to DJ Quick or EA Ski or, you know, somebody like that. Polo the Don, your boy Metro Boomin, and I know a lot of producers. I like listening to Bolo. And a lot of other producers who weren't that famous, but their music sounds great. Like I love Av McCrae's beats, DJ Av. Shout out. I love his beats. Okay, so whether he has placements and this and that, it doesn't matter. I'm listening to the quality of the music. All right. Everybody's focus is not to get a placement. Okay. What's another one that I like? His beats are pretty good. Hate if you want to, but I like Busy Bee Works. I like his beats too, with what he does in FL Studio. All right. I'll listen to those guys. You know, and I have over 30 years of experience. Also check out Sample King when he does his quick tutorial videos. Those beats they actually sound good. So I listen to people like that, you know. So you haven't been making beats more than 10 years, and I'm not going to listen to you, and I think you're out of bounds, all right? Now, that's my opinion. So how do you know if you haven't even owned the MPC? Also, I'm not saying don't get an MPC for beat making, but what I'm saying is that you don't even have the experience or practical work experience with the MPC to even know. Also, they go into comparing making tracks on the computer versus the newest and the latest MPC, which currently officially is the MPC Live 3. All right, it's soon to be the MPC XL, in my opinion, because I think that's the real deal. But anyway, first of all, who would recommend an $1,800 MPC to a new beat maker and with no experience, and then give them reasons to buy a computer? All right, so in this scenario, with no other options, it's absolutely the better choice. Yes, get a computer. I'm not going to tell you to get a computer because, hey, you know, it's cheaper or whatever, and your only option is the MPC Live 3. So with that being said, you can get a $500 computer, software, MIDI controller, interface, all for under $1,000. You might even get it cheaper than that, $600. All right, but I believe the original MPC 1 or the 1 Plus is the best MPC for new producers who want to jump into the MPC world. So, you know, I would say, and what I've been researching is those units are they're like way cheaper, even new or used. You know, the MPC 1 Plus has went down in price. Also, people are giving away the MPC 1s for $300-$400. I found one for $200. You know, I think those are great to start off on before you go all in. All right. So, and then you may be able to figure out how to incorporate it into your workflow with the computer. So The MPC 1 is cheap, new, and used compared to the Live 3. You know, what's not, you know, that you get like a Digitone or something. So you can find them even now you can even find the Live 2s for $600 to $700 these days. So, you know, which are still very capable. They're not far from the MPC Live 3. Okay? All right, you can just do fewer things, but those things, a lot of the features, you may not need those. You may not need those. You know, you may not even care. But the MPC Live 2 is a great bargain. That way you have your you have your MPC, your interface, everything, even the speakers built in on it. Or just throw some nice headphones on. But everything is right there in one unit. It runs all the new plugins. There are workarounds to run the articulations on the pads for the MPC Live 2. All right. And also for an all-in-one, the Key 37 is an excellent solution, especially if you find one, you know, between $500 and $600. So with that in mind, prices have dropped because of what's coming. But it's a great time to start your MPC journey because of that. When I think about what's coming, yeah, stay tuned. So, and one of my other points is if you have not owned, let me just get to the bottom line, all right? So this is a summary. If you have not owned or had extensive experience with the MPC, stop comparing. If you have been making beats in Fruity Loops, FL Studio since day one, stop comparing. If you had not used any standalone equipment in your life to make beats, stop comparing. If you cannot tap out a pattern with the kick on 1 and the snare on 2 in 4/4 time at 75 BPM on beat with the metronome, stop comparing. All right? So that's just my opinion. I have more to say about it, and I do pay attention to the hate videos of Akai and the MPC. And do I want to put energy into that? Yeah, I will later on. And I watched Bolo's video, and he's like being really, really nice about it. You know, I will say a lot of the hate comes from not being able to afford the product. Okay. The converter argument, that is, to me, that's a no argument. Even if you do have the better quote unquote converters, still need to know what you're doing. You know, I don't know. These days, I don't know one producer who records straight to tape, nothing is going through it, or tape, rather to their DAW through the interface, you know, without any kind of processing. Even then, it still has to be mixed and meshed in with the rest of the song. So, you know, that's my thing. MPC versus computer. And let me say it again. If you have not owned or had extensive experience with an MPC, stop comparing. I don't care. You know, if you had an MPC 2000 for a while and you worked on it, yeah, go ahead and compare. Okay, if you had an MPC 1, yeah, go ahead and compare. All right, for extensive use. And you use it in standalone mode, go ahead and compare. But if you have been making beats in FL Studio since day one, stop comparing. If you have not used any standalone equipment in your life to make beats, stop comparing. If you cannot tap out a pattern with the kick on 1 and the snare on 2 in 4/4 time at 75 beats per minute, all right? And on beat with the metronome, okay? So stop comparing, all right? So thanks for watching. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for coming and liking. And until the next one, peace. We're going to pull up the MPC 2000 and rock on it too. And I got a song that I'm going to replace the drums with on the MPC 62 because you just got to have that thing on it, you know? So peace out. Thanks for watching.